Diana, a Mexican-American woman, is traveling with her husband Beto by car to a new town, having left Los Angeles. Diana is apprehensive about moving to a Mexican farming community in Southern California, but Beto says it will be good for them both and their baby that will be born soon. Diana says to Beto that she understands how much it means to him. Beto speaks in Spanish, and Diana gives him a funny look because she doesn't understand hardly any Spanish. Beto says it's the equivalent of the English saying, "Life's too short." They arrive at their home and they go in to explore. Diana is less than enthused, commenting that it looks different from the photos. Beto assures her he can fix it up, and Diana tells him they will need new paint, new furniture, and their family photos put up. Beto holds Diana affectionately. They take a walk outside and see there is a small shed and other small building, and the house is on a very large block of land. Beto suggests they go and get lunch and get to know the town. They enter a gift shop that sells religious items and other paraphernalia. Beto purchases a Christian cross, and Diana rolls her eyes, saying don't they have enough already because the house was full of them. The shop owner speaks in Spanish to Diana, but Diana says her Spanish is bad. This confuses the shop owner because Diana is Hispanic, but she doesn't realize she grew up in America. Before they leave, the shop owner offers to bless them and their unborn baby, and Diana is about to decline, but Beto gives her a look not to be rude, and he agrees to the shop owner's blessing. The shop owner grabs Diana's face in her hands and speaks a blessing over their family in Spanish. She then says to Diana she is so happy to meet them, and that this town can be a beautiful place. Diana finds this to be a weird statement, and there is awkwardness in the air as they leave. The shop owner asks them to return sometime, and Beto agrees. Later that night, Diana is on the bed and asking out loud to Beto why the shop owner said the town can be a lovely place to live, because it sounds like it implies that sometimes it is not a nice place to live. Beto doesn't acknowledge the comment and thinks Diana is over-exaggerating. He then explains how he likes the town, and it reminds him of the small town he grew up in. Diana smiles warmly at him. Suddenly, Diana becomes alarmed because she hears something moving outside and tells Beto. He goes outside to the shed to investigate. When he can't find anything, he goes back inside. But there is a person in their yard. Beto meets the farm manager and thanks him and Mr. Quayle for letting them stay at the farmhouse. The manager walks him around to introduce him to all the farm workers. Back at the farmhouse, Diana is talking to her sister. Diana tries to convince her sister that she is happy, but her sister can't believe she left Los Angeles. Diana is getting worked up about her mother when she hears a noise outside and tells her sister she will call her back. She walks out into her yard to look. She walks into the shed that Beto inspected last night and she finds boxes of items from the previous resident. She looks through one box and finds a pretty jewelry box with a protection necklace. She finds lots of black and white photos of a family and newspaper clippings of articles such as the truth about pesticides. Without warning, the shed door slams shut, causing Diana a fright. Diana walks over to open it back up, but it is jammed shut. She panics and bashes on the door and pushes on it with all her might until she is finally able to bust it open. As she walks out of the shed, she sees a small package hanging from a tree in her yard. She reaches up to touch it, and it falls to the ground. To her horror, she sees that it looks like a human eyeball wrapped up in cloth. When her husband comes home, she shows him the eyeball, but Beto doesn't seem that concerned about it, stating that they do not know how long it has been there. Diana stares incredulously at his response. She then asks him if he knows anything about the previous owners, and he says no, but she can ask at the barbecue they are going to. Diana doesn't want to go, but Beto says it's important to meet their community. Diana feels uncomfortable about going because she doesn't speak Spanish. Diana tries to talk to two other young Latino women, but they continue to speak Spanish in front of her and she feels left out. She walks over to get a drink, and the farm manager comforts her, saying she will pick up the language in no time and invites her to take homemade lemonade home. She is grateful. The next day, Diana is staring at her typewriter, trying to find inspiration to do some writing. She rocks back and forth on the back leg of her kitchen chair and gets a fright when she hears someone knock at the door. She opens the door to find Anita, the shop owner, at her doorstep. She touches her belly and asks how she is, but Diana is uncomfortable with her touching her. Anita tries to hand her a protection necklace she made, and that she says she creates for all pregnant women for their protection. Diana politely declines, and because she recognizes the necklace, she asks Anita if she knew the previous couple, and Anita says a lady's name, Teresa. Diana asks her if she knows her forwarding address, so that she can send them all the personal effects they left in the shed, but Anita cuts her off and tells her to leave it. Now she becomes more forceful, and tells Diana she has to take the necklace for her protection, but Diana remains firm and tells her she has to leave and closes the door in her face. When Anita is gone, Diana goes and gets the box of the previous resident's stuff and brings it into the house and looks through it. She sees the protection necklace and gets out the jewelry music box, which has a mirror in the lid as she flips it up. Diana finds a diary, and when she opens it, an old newspaper clipping falls out entitled, "River Fever, Why Farm Workers Are Getting Sick." She begins to read the newspaper clipping while rocking back on the back legs of her kitchen chair. She has a drink of lemonade in one hand, and as she rocks down she sees a hand in the mirror and she is so shocked she falls backwards onto the back of her chair. Diana goes to the hospital to make sure the baby is fine, and luckily everything is okay. The doctor explains he would like to keep her overnight for observation, and Beto wants to stay with her, but the nurse explains hospital policy doesn't allow overnight guests. Reluctantly, he goes home and says he will see Diana first thing the next morning. That night at hospital, Diana hears a woman in pain yelling out in distress. She walks over to find another pregnant woman. She offers her help, but all the woman keeps saying is the curse in Spanish. The nurse comes and tells Diana to go back to bed to rest, and she will look after Mrs. Hernandez. When Beto comes to pick her up from the hospital in the morning, Diana tries to ask if Mrs. Hernandez is okay from last night, but she apparently has no memory of her own distress last night, as she has no idea what Diana is talking about. When Diana goes home, she begins to tell Beto about the journal and the articles they were collecting. Beto thinks the woman must have been a journalist or writer, as she had done so much research on the town and the farm. Soon Diana becomes deeply entrenched in translating the journal entries and learning more about what Teresa was uncovering about the use of dangerous pesticides. As she is sitting there reading, she notices a rash on her left arm. Diana completes some more research and figures out it is only dangerous to pregnant women. She visits Anita at her shop and tells her all the research that Teresa had done before her and what this means for the workers at the farm, and asks for Anita's help to expose it. However, Anita doesn't believe it's the pesticides at all, but a curse, the same one Mrs. Hernandez was mentioning in her hospital bed. Diana refuses to believe it. Anita then asks how she has the rash on her arm, when she is not a farm worker and has not been exposed to the chemical. Diana has no answer for this, and the idea makes her quiet and uncomfortable. She walks out of the store. When she gets home, Beto tries to get her to calm down, but she wants Beto to tell his boss that his pesticides are making everyone sick. Beto doesn't want to, because he just started the job. They have a heated argument, because Beto says she has only started learning Spanish to turn it against him by making him uncomfortable at work. She criticizes him, and says he is putting their family at risk. And Beto becomes defensive and is sarcastic to Diana. Then he apologizes and explains to Diana that he has to do a good job. He is the first one in his family to be a manager. Diana says that he has to protect the workers then, and he promises that he will. Suddenly, Diana gets stabbing pains in her stomach. The doctor has a home visit, but the doctor has no explanation and tells her to pray. Diana can't believe what she is hearing, as she does not believe in supernatural or religious things. The next day, Beto starts to look at the pesticides being sprayed into the air and starts to question things in his own mind. He brings up Anita in front of the senior farm manager, and he scoffs and says he hopes he doesn't believe in all that rubbish. As Diana digs deeper into Teresa's journal entries, she notices it was happening in another town. She drives there to the public records and looks at the birth rates. The birth rates dropped in Arlington too, but rose again in the last 5 years. However, for their town, the birth rate for Hispanic women continues to decline. Diana is in the hospital again when she hears Mrs. Hernandez crying again. She peeks into the room and the nurse is trying to get her to sign a form. Eventually she does. Diana rings to tell Beto what she saw, and urges him to visit the doctor there at Arlington to find out which doctor was there before him during the low birth rates. Beto does it, and the doctor gives Beto the previous doctor's details. To Beto's horror, he finds out the previous doctor is their town's current doctor, Dr. Bell. He rings Diana at the hospital to let her know. She is horrified. She packs her bag at night and goes to leave, but then decides to look into Dr. Bell's office. She looks up the ladies' files that she had a barbecue with, and they had all signed consent forms for sterilization. Lastly, she looks at Teresa's file and sees that she died from a complication of a tubal ligation. It dawns on her that the cause of the declining birth rate is not to do with a curse, but all because of Dr. Bell. From nowhere, someone comes from behind and puts a gas mask on her. Diana falls unconscious. She wakes up in a maternity surgery seat, and her wrists and ankles are shackled. She checks to see if she is still pregnant, and she is. She looks over to see Dr. Bell preparing utensils, and she asks him what is going to happen. He tells her she has stuck her nose in where she shouldn't have, and unfortunately she will die during childbirth. He tells her exactly how he will make it seem that she has died that way. Diana screams out for help. Dr. Bell tells her to stop and just settle down, and is trying to put the gas mask on her, and this time it is intended that she will not wake up. Beto runs into the room and attacks Dr. Bell. They both get into a struggle and Dr. Bell stabs Beto in the left shoulder. The nurse runs off to seemingly notify someone. Beto fights back and stabs Dr. Bell through the heart. He falls to the ground and chokes on his own blood. Next, Beto rushes over to assist Diana to untie her shackle. Just after he has untied her and is helping her out of the chair, he is shot through the chest. He falls to the floor. Diana sees the senior farm manager is the one with the gun and has just shot Beto. He is frustrated and tells Diana she should have just kept her mouth shut and drank her medicine. Diana realizes that is how they made all the pregnant women sick. They would poison them with poison lemonade. He aims the gun right at her head, and she holds her protection necklace, prays to it and asks for help. She sings softly, and for a moment the farm manager hesitates to shoot her, appearing out of nowhere. The ghost of Teresa deliberately screams at the farm manager to frighten him, and he backs away yelling in terror. Diana uses the opportunity to push him backwards through the glass window and he is impaled by a shard of glass. He chokes on his own blood. Diana turns around and sees Teresa smiling. and she smiles at her, grateful for her help, and with that, Teresa looks at Peace and leaves. She then rushes over to Beto's side, cradling his head, begging him to stay alive and stay with her. Weeks later, Diana has a beautiful baby boy, and she is welcoming her sister to her in Beto's home. Beto is alive and well, and they all gather together to look at and admire the beautiful baby boy that Diana and Beto have. Diana shows her sister the book she has finally written about her life, about something that matters, and her sister tries to read the Spanish she has on the front. Diana reads it for her fluently, and she smiles up at Beto, who is so proud of her. The end.